welcome back. This is the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie.
Welcome to the watch party!
All right, we have all been absolutely drowning. My brother described the news this week as Noah and the flood. General Mkhwanazi's press conference just wiped every other news story off the map. And last night we wrote the TV show after the quickie, the very quick address from President Ramaphosa. For him, that was fast, guys. He moved. And as I said earlier on the show, he was only 35 minutes late, which meant that he was being serious, because he's always much later than that. And when I was thinking about who I wanted to get on the TV show today to really learn and more deeply understand all these dynamics, Feroz Kachalia, the new interim police minister, acting Deputy Chief Justice Madlanga, who's going to be heading the commission, all these different dynamics, the judiciary and the policing service and the politics. There was only one person I want to speak to. You know her already. She's a star legal journalist and hit author now. Please welcome back Karyn Maughan to the Dan Corder Show. We're so happy to have you back. I know I make you uncomfortable with the compliments, but they are deserved.
No, I mean, you're my hype man. I love it so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's start with this commission of inquiry. Another one, as DJ Khaled always says, usually not about politics though. So there's been a lot of hackles, and literally hackles raised about this on the internet last night in particular. Former EFF bigwig Mbuyiseni Ndlozi was saying, listen, what else was he supposed to do?
Yeah. You
need to have a commission. There's nothing else that is appropriate in this moment when the allegations of essentially a borderline mafia state, a criminal syndicate running not just the police but the metro cops apparently in Gauteng, the judiciary, the correctional services, politicians at all levels, business people. You have to have a commission of inquiry, but there was still so much criticism of the fact that it's only a commission of inquiry, despite the fact that most opposition MPs said this is the worst thing that Ramaphosa has ever done. But then most infamously, Ndlela from MK was asked what would MK rather have had Ramaphosa do? And they said, oh, we haven't met and talked about that yet. We will get back to you on that. But why do you think there was such criticism by the South African broad public of this commission of inquiry?
Well, it comes in the context of South Africa having this fascinating trait of taking its biggest political, socio-economic kind of scandals and always deferring it to a commission to investigate. Whether it was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission about the incredible atrocities of apartheid, the Marikana Commission where we saw miners being gunned down on live TV. There has been this deference to the use of a commission to avoid the truly ugly aspects of our society. In some respects, it's been effective. We saw with the SARS Commission, that was very fast. But I mean, in that particular scenario, the ultimate game plan was to get rid of Tom Moyane, and that's what happened. But there were a lot of very helpful things that came out of that commission to enable SARS to effectively rebuild itself, though there might be a debate around that. But essentially, I think South Africans are very tired of this use of let's kick the can down the road with a commission, let's not address the thing in real time, and let's effectively outsource those governance roles to judges to tell us what the problem is and confirm what we already knew, which is exactly what happened with state capture. And then, of course, the lack of action after the State Capture Commission confirmed that suspicion that this is a mechanism for effectively kicking the can down the road.
I want to talk about the Zondo Commission for a second, because a lot of people said, well, we got no overalls from the Zondo Commission whatsoever. It was a waste of time and money, and it went on for 4 years. It did go on for 4 years. We did find out a lot of useful stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's not the Commission's fault that nobody has been prosecuted. That's a different function. The NPA and the investigators and the Justice Department's job is to do that. Now, we can talk about why they haven't done anything, but we learned a lot of valuable stuff from the Zondo Commission.
Well, the Deputy Chief Justice, as he then was, described the ANC as an organized criminal enterprise. And, I think a lot of us had this suspicion about the machinations of the ANC, the way in which corruption works, but that was exposed completely to the country. And I think fundamentally that there was a direct line from those findings and the ANC's inability or apparent, reluctance to deal with them in a truly effective way, and the election results. You may not have seen people in orange overalls, but the party that was defined as this organized criminal enterprise lost power.
Yeah.
And I think that was that was a profound impact of the Zondo inquiry, which also recovered in the region of about 4 billion rand.
That's true.
You know, they got those assets back. And, you know, I think that there is obviously a huge amount of unhappiness over the fact that we haven't seen this translate into criminal prosecutions. But the inquiry that we are now seeing, I think, is going to go into a lot of why that isn't happening.
Right.
Because you're not just looking at the police, you're looking at the Metro Police, you're looking at the NPA, and you're looking at the judiciary. It has the potential to turn into a beer myth like the state capture inquiry was. So the terms of reference that Ramaphosa sets for this, what he says needs to be investigated, will be crucial to the kind of timeframes that we're looking at. But this is really an opportunity for us in the post-Zuma era to examine the Ramaphosa administration's law enforcement machinery and the administration of justice, and really get to the heart of, is it not working because of sheer incompetence? Is it not working because of malicious incompetence? Or is there, as Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi has implied, this massive syndicate that is running everything? And then, you know, what the country does with that will be one thing. We're not necessarily assured in the wake of Zondo that the president will respond to those findings in the way that maybe we would hope for, but it will give people who are maybe looking for a reason to turn away from the political decisions that they've made in the past further ammunition to do so. And I actually think that this might be the beginning of the end of the ANC.
Yeah, but I'm reminded of an old quote. I can't even remember where it's from, but it's decades old. It's quite famous. So the quote is, and I will explain it, the quote is, what a system does is its function. So what that means is, there's no point saying that something is supposed to do this when it never does that thing.
Yeah.
If it consistently fails to do what you claim it's supposed to do, it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. That's what it's designed to manifest. So if we have education failures every single year and the education system is getting worse, the function of the education department is failing education. Even if they claim that it's something else and they would love it to be something else, if they can never achieve what they say they want, then what it's actually achieving is actually what it does. And that's what I'm reminded of with what you just said about if, like, the Justice Department, and I mean, one of the examples in Mkhwanazi's claims is about Shadrach Sabir allegedly taking 121 live investigations away from the political killings task team and just letting them gather dust on his desk. But now I want to ask you about, a lot of people don't know about the retiring Deputy Chief Justice Madlanga. Let's talk about this esteemed justice who's going to be heading up this commission. We need to know who's in charge.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting because, of course, it was another Deputy Chief Justice, Zondo, who did the state capture inquiry to such disastrous implications for the ANC. And of course, we know that DCJ Madlanga was one of the candidates who was put up as a potential Chief Justice of this country. He is widely regarded as an excellent jurist. He's a very, very good judge. He is assisted by, advocates Khumalo and Sesi Beloy, who of course is on the JSC. She's an excellent, excellent advocate. And Madlanga is someone who has made a number of courageous decisions, in terms of the JSC and its operations. He has absolutely unimpeachable integrity. And I think the thing to remember here is that because this is a commission of inquiry, these judges and the judge at the DCJ and the advocates that have been appointed to assist him have powers of subpoena. And they can summons people to come and testify.
And it's a crime to not honor the summons.
Completely. And one of the things that fascinates me about this whole story, because I'm telling you this is going to be a big battle, is how much of this is going to be public.
Exactly.
Because I suspect when people start realizing how deeply problematic a lot of this evidence is, we're going to see what didn't happen in Zondo, and there's going to be this thing about classification and potentially impacting on investigations, because this is happening in real time. A lot of the when we look at something like Kat Matlala, he's accused of a murder case that that attempted murder that's actually going on at the moment.
And he's in Nkosimampuru prison right now.
Correct. And so you've got live investigations at the same time that you're investigating whether these directly criminally implicated people have some kind of connection to, for instance, Senzo Mkhunu, etc. So I think, as the media, we are going to have a very, very interesting battle if potentially that line is drawn and it's said, well, we can do some of this in public, but a lot of it we want in private because of the implications for our investigations.
And a lot of the people who are going to be summoned are going to say that they're investigations, but they actually just don't want to be hauled over the coals in public.
Exactly.
So there's dynamics.
And that's why, Dan, again, referring to this issue of terms of reference, President Cyril Ramaphosa will outline what he wants this commission to investigate, and that's what's so pivotal. What happened with Zuma, and Zondo used this as a defense against this whole argument that you've turned this investigation that was supposed to be 6 months into this lumbering behemoth, that just went on for however many years and cost taxpayers 1 billion, was that what essentially Zuma said was investigate all the corruption everywhere that has ever happened at any time. And so as a consequence, you had them looking at Eskom, Transnet, when Thuli Madonsela had essentially focused initially on very much on Eskom, and municipalities, and at one stage law enforcement, though Zondo didn't make any real findings in regard to that. And so it's really going to be about, does Ramaphosa want to snowblind us with a huge amount of information, or is this a thing where he says, okay, these are the direct allegations. We have a limited investigation.
Right.
We want this done in this time, within the 6-month period or whatever it is. And how dirty are we going to get, and what will the budget be? Because that of course is going to be a big issue for a lot of people.
He's keeping 700 million for the national YAP. The fireside yap, the national dialogue. I'm so interested by what you said just now about how well regarded and brave and esteemed Madlanga is, because on some level I'm like, okay, if I was the president, why would I put the best people on this?
Yeah.
It's not in my interest to have the best people. Like, didn't he learn from Zuma? The biggest mistake Zuma ever made was making Thuli Madonsela public protector.
Yes.
And I'm like, why would Ramaphosa put the really good guys in charge of this? Why do you think? He could have picked a number of people.
I don't, this is what fascinates me, and this is why I love going on your show, because you think about things that I haven't necessarily thought about. But I think that if it wasn't dealt with on the most senior level, the South African public would just simply not accept a commission of inquiry. So I think it's almost like you buffering yourself against the criticism that will come.
Right.
But I have to be honest with you, I don't think they've actually thought this through. I don't think they have. I think that they're going to realize when this thing starts getting underway, and you might see a belated effort to sort of reel back the terms of reference, but I don't think they know
it's too late.
That it's going to be the end for. I honestly, mark my words, Dan, on this day, Karyn Maughan said this is the beginning of the end for the ANC.
Wild. Well, mark my words on this day. Dan Corder said that I kind of felt when Mkhwanazi was speaking that everyone high up in the security forces has got away with so much because it's mutually assured destruction.
Correct.
I've got dirt on you, you've got dirt on me, and so long as nobody says anything, there won't be nuclear war. But now someone has fired a nuke, and the nukes are going to come right back. But what I'm so happy about is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to have more Karyn Maughan, because there's so much more to talk about. Hey, welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie.
Welcome to the watch party!
Oh, it's an A+ audience in tonight. And now I'm thrilled to say we have more Karyn Maughan, because we just spoke at length about so many of the ins and outs of the new latest commission of inquiry and Justice Madlanga and, all these different factions who are going to be fighting over how the commission plays out as we investigate what seems to be a full-on police civil war. But I have so many more questions, and I'm so glad that Karyn Maughan is here. So we're going to lock right back into it. One big contestation, one big criticism of Ramaphosa, and this includes me, is how can we have an interim report in 3 months and another in 6 months? By the time we have the second interim report, it's not even the final, it'll be 2026, Karyn. It'll be after Christmas and December and New Year's. We need answers now. So I want to hear from you because, look, I know commissions of inquiry take time. I know subpoenaing takes time. I know properly investigating evidence and cross-examining witnesses takes time, all these things. But at the same time, there are core allegations against Police Minister Mkhwanazi, a long-time Ramaphosa ally who switched from Zuma to Ramaphosa to get Ramaphosa in power in the first place, that need to be dealt with now while he's on paid leave, sitting at home on his Xbox, I assume. And National Assembly Speaker Toko Didiza has already called for 3 standing committees in Parliament to investigate Mkhwanazi's claims. So why can't we throw all resources into a few answers right now, even as the commission bubbles for longer than half a year?
No, I think that's an excellent question, but I'll tell you why it's happening like this. This follows the same track as the SARS Commission. Remember, there was an interim report in SARS, and Ramaphosa used that to fire Tom Moyane.
Okay.
So I think we can all see which direction that might be going in.
The playbook is clear.
And I think that, I think that the point is, until you can say to the public, well, we have some sense of what the truth is here, it would be potentially politically unwise for him to fire Senzo Mkhwanazi straight off the bat of those allegations. Because, as you know, I think there are also questions around, Mkhwanazi as well. And I think that as this thing unravels, we may find that I'll hope that, you're either Team Senzo or Team Mkhwanazi. None of us are going to want to be on either of those teams because there may be some untoward things are discovered about both of them, potentially. And I think that the president will want to say, well, with this information, I don't have a choice. I have to do that. Because Ramaphosa, just in another context, the genius of the DA essentially saying, you're going to have to push us out if you want us out, is that Ramaphosa has a fundamental almost allergy to making a decision on his own. So he will literally break out in hives, that man, if he has to actually fire someone without 45 pages and a, encyclopedia behind him. So I think that that's what's going to justify his response, and then he can be, well, I had no choice, look at what they've found in this situation.
But I will say, controversially, not to defend the man, but that playbook of his, where essentially he's just signing on a collective decision, allows himself to dodge responsibility.
Yes, of
which
course.
for him is very good politically, because he's got an NEC meeting of the ANC in a few weeks' time, where the matter of Mkhwanazi and the matter of the DA needs to come about, and there are different lobbying interests fighting for different things, and he wants to maintain personal power. So the DA is putting him in a bad place, but also he's playing the game very well, and he seems to always survive and win. Anyway, let's talk about Mkhwanazi.
Yes.
Sorry, did you want to say one more?
I just wanted to say that we cannot ignore the ginormous elephant in the room. His name is Phala Phala, and it's not like you. And I mean, there's litigation.
That investigation was sealed.
Yeah. Well, the Constitutional Court still needs to make a decision about whether Parliament, in fact, did the right thing in regard to that in response to litigation from the EFF. But it does mean that he is in a lot more vulnerable of a place to make those kind of quick decisions.
Yeah.
Because if you fire Senzo Mkhwanazi on the back of that, well, what about the however many hundreds of dollars that were found in your couch, which, and he will sort of say, well, I was cleared by the Public Protector, I was cleared by the Reserve Bank, I was cleared by, and. But there is still that sword of Damocles hanging over in the Constitutional Court about, did Parliament actually do the right thing in response to the quite strong findings that were made against him by retired Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo.
But that's why I want to talk about General Mkhwanazi, and it's so interesting because assuming everything he said is true, and again it's not been thoroughly checked enough yet, that's what's going to happen now, but assuming everything that he said is true, he's the brave, good cop that South Africa has been begging and crying out for. And he played the country and the media beautifully last Sunday by framing himself as this champion of the people. And I think that South Africans, we are all so tired. I don't know if this is going to be bleeped, but we are so full of crime and of a failing state that it could have been anyone. Any police person standing up and saying all these things, and we would have been like, that's my man, that's my man. And he is quite good looking too, that's my man. Like South Africa's been looking out for a hero.
Yeah.
And again, I've got no reason to argue that he was lying. I've got no reason to argue yet that he was telling the truth. We have to wait and see. But Mkhwanazi is now an untouchable hero in this country. But at the same time, it's hard to believe that any cop with that level of power is clean, guys.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about Mkhwanazi. There was reporting yesterday that he and National Police Commissioner, the forgotten man in this story, Fani Masemola, are being investigated for tender fraud to the value of around 6.7 million rand. And Mkhwanazi has been in the game for a long time. And again, I'm not casting stones. I'm just saying we need to be aware of all of these dynamics, that we may find out that they're all dirty to one degree or another. What do we know about Mkhwanazi so far? I know he is actually, controversially for some, been criticized a lot for the last 10 years for many different things that he's done.
Well, I mean, the political killings task team thing, you know, that team is very heavily criticized. You know, there have been allegations over the years that, you know, they tortured people, that they arrested those two lawyers that had exposed, you know, Oscar Maboyane's alleged fake degree, and they were subjected to, you know, being held, you know, in police cells, you know, in seriously questionable circumstances. You know, people like Mary de Haas, very, very critical of that political killings task team, say they abused their power. You know, Mkhwanazi came out during that press conference and said that as a result of the work that was done by that unit, I think they'd got something like 106 convictions or 121 convictions in 106 cases. You know, I was not aware of that. If that is true in our current landscape of inaction, it would be incredibly impressive. But I think that you're right. I think that we have to apply the same rigor to every single person who makes allegations, that we have to say, okay, you know, we take what you're saying, but let's have the investigation. Let's see the work that you've done, and let's understand the circumstances in which these decisions were made. Because I remember reporting on the closing of the political killings task team, and it was welcomed by a lot of people, including, you know, some of its biggest critics, who were saying that this is essentially, you know, a kind of, you know, extrajudicial, people getting shot by the cops all the time. And, you know, we've seen that narrative before. We saw it about the Cato Manor Police Unit. Of course, those prosecutions didn't translate into anything. But the sense of KZN is kind of this wild west of South Africa, where police, the population is so beleaguered by crime that, you know, many police officers may actually feel like, you know what, I'm going to deal with this in my own way. And it's resulted in a huge amount of deaths, and, you know, the police have had to defend themselves in regard to that. So I think that this inquiry will be important into investigating the truth of that also. Yeah. Because, you know, at this point, we have some very strong accusations which seem to be rested on, you know, WhatsApp messages. There does seem to be corroborating evidence for some of this. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, we've seen again and again and again that when you start scratching, other things come up as well.
But it's interesting because the police minister has already changed his tune about one Brown Mkhwanazi.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Brown Mkhwanazi. He said he saw a photo of his face in March and he didn't know this man. And then last week he was like, he's a comrade but not an associate. And to which we said, what is the difference? And he has not yet answered my WhatsApp or my email. No shame, I don't have his WhatsApp or his email. But it's just so interesting, and I think that Mkhwanazi has played this beautifully, because now, if anything is said against him,
absolutely,
South Africans will go, he's being framed. And he might be, but we don't know. We don't know if it's all a stitch up, and it really might be. There are a lot of people who want to take him out and silence him and besmirch his reputation, but at the same time, he may have known that these investigations were coming against him, and he may have just made the first move and become a South African hero, but he may have known, I've got so many rabbit hole thoughts here. He may have known that the investigations were coming, but that they themselves were a stitch up, and he was just trying to preempt and defend himself. So that is why this is going to be an era-defining moment for the police service.
And I mean, I think the thing to remember is that, you know, when we've had inquiries before, like with Zondo, it was off the back of the Gupta leaks. It was off the back of Thuli Manansela's investigation. We had people here and there, you know, where they were talking about, you know, sort of whistleblowers. There were security guards who gave her some information. It is the first time that we've seen someone in a democratic South African environment who is in the leadership of the police force come out and say, here's the rot.
Yeah.
And that's very, very different from any kind of inquiry that we've had before, where there's essentially a very strong allegation from someone who has access to those levers of power. And, you know, when Zondo tried to investigate law enforcement, he did a very good job with the SSA, when, you know, a lot of the stuff came out there. But, you know, he said at the time that there was a lack of cooperation. They couldn't get information. They were just being stonewalled. Now, I think in this environment where you've got Mkhwanazi, who clearly has access to all this stuff, we may have a lot more, you know, a lot more evidence to be presented. And when you have that strength of evidence, people need to defend themselves. And so they're more likely to come out and be like, here's everything, you know. And in that scenario, our possibilities of actually getting to the truth, I think, are even more intensified. And that's what I think, you know, we're all kind of sitting waiting for, essentially.
Because it's all no holds barred now. The bets are off.
And I mean, Shadrach Sabir for me is quite an interesting figure because, you know, he himself was the sort of target of investigations during the so-called state capture era, and then came back and is now in the midst of this whole, you know, epicenter of scandal. And yeah, I mean, I think that everyone is very, very wary of coming out now and saying things, because you've seen Senzo Mkhunu just being like, it's fine, you know, I'm out, like I'll take my 3 months off, whatever, and saying I support an investigation, etc., etc. But I think that this is going to potentially be a defining moment. And it's going to also, you know, bolster the cause of people like Glynis Breitenbach, for example, who've said, we need another NPA, we need a different body from the NPA. These law enforcement environments are so compromised that we can't trust them to do the hardcore corruption kind of things. And people will be supportive of that. Because, you know, the tragedy of South Africa is that this country is amazing. It has the best people in the world. It has the most innovative, like, look at the young people that are out there, what they do, what they're capable of in the midst of absolutely nothing. Now, if we had functional law enforcement, if we had a properly functioning justice system, we would be unstoppable. But our peoples are being suppressed by the lack of our leadership.
Totally. I mean, that's
and that's
true.
what this inquiry is ultimately about. And that's what I hope comes out of it, is that we need a change, because this is just simply not good enough for South Africa.
Right. Karyn Maughan, isn't she amazing? Thank you so much. What an absolute treat. I'm so glad that you're a friend of the show and we can have you back. And that is our show. Thank you so much for watching. We're out of time, but we'll be back this coming Monday for the next episode of The Dan Quarters Show. Remember, you can watch all of our episodes absolutely free on eNCA.com. Have a beautiful week, and truly this week, I mean it, good luck, South Africa.